Hi everyone, this is Kasia Zmokla from Digital Art Classes. Today we will be working in Photoshop. So just to remind you, this is going to be the second video from the series of 3. In the previous video, in the first one, we've been working with this image in Capture One. So we have edited this portrait in Capture One, including the skin retouch. Today we will take exactly the same image and we will see what can be done in Photoshop. So today we'll be working in Photoshop with dodging and burning technique. So this is the result we are going to work towards, and this is the starting point. So we are going to start with this image and we will be working with dodging and burning, we will be working with cleanup, and we will add in the end some adjustments, including a little bit of very quick color grading. So this is the second video, and in the next video we will be working again in Photoshop but with frequency separation. So let's jump right into it. Okay, so let's begin our edit. In the previous video, we've been working on exactly the same image in Capture One. So the initial original file was a raw file and the file was developed in Capture One. And in Photoshop, I didn't use Adobe Camera Raw, I just have used the image that was developed already in Capture One, so I wanted to have the same starting point. So if I just press and hold Alt key and click on the background, this is the image that we are going to start with today. So this is the image that was developed in Capture One and exported as 16-bit TIFF file. So as you can see here, we are going to be working with RGB file, and just to maintain as high quality as possible, remember always export your files as 16-bit. So you have a choice of 8 or 16, and 16 obviously gives you much more data to work with. So in the end, after finishing the third video, I'm going to compare the results from Capture One, from Photoshop with dodging and burning, and from Photoshop with frequency separation. So that's why I have taken the image that was developed in Capture One. So I have already corrected white balance and I have turned the image, I have basically change the curve to linear response. But basically, you can take any image, any portrait, good quality. Obviously 16-bit is better than 8. So this is 100%, and when we will be working on retouching with healing brush, I'm going to zoom in. So this is the original file. Okay, so let's begin. So let me just quickly delete the layers where I have done the work, and I have just background layer. So let's start. So I'm going to select the background layer and duplicate it. So I'm hitting Command J on the keyboard, and here on this layer I'm going to perform the very basic cleanup. So let's just rename this layer to cleanup, and I'm going to be working with the spot healing brush tool. So let's just pick it from here, and I will be working with a tablet. If you don't have a tablet, you can do this with a mouse, but of course it is much more comfortable if you're working with a pen. So when it comes to the settings of the brush, of the spot healing brush tool, similar principles apply as in Capture One. So basically the smaller the brush, the better, because we will be working with this brush and it's going to affect both color and structure and texture. So if we will be working with too big brush, for example, if I would sample in this area, this would just sample too big area too much. So the brush should be as small as possible, and then you can increase the size if you would like to remove bigger blemish like this one. So the size of the brush we're going to adjust dynamically. You can do this in Photoshop with right and left square bracket on your keyboard. So this is the most efficient, the fastest way of adjusting the size. You can do this as well here. So here you can move the slider to adjust the size, but the negative part of this is that you don't actually see the size of the brush. If you are hovering over the image and working with the square bracket, let's just do something like that, you actually can see dynamically how the size of the brush is changing, and this is really, really helpful. You can change the size of the brush as well by right-clicking on the image, and then you can have access to the brush properties. So size, hardness should be set to 0, spacing, it doesn't matter, it can be around 50%. And when it comes to angle and roundness, I like keeping my brush round, so I'm not going to change anything here, but some people like to have the brush more in the ellipse shape. But I think like that it's efficient and you don't need to go too much into these settings. For sure, the most important setting here is hardness, so it should be 0, and when it comes to the size, we're going to adjust it. So let's just begin working on our image. So on the very first layer, the cleanup layer, I'm going to focus on just removing those blemishes that are visible. So on the cleanup, we are going to take care of all those little things, and then with dodging and burning we will be working further on smoothing up the skin, and we will be working on smoothing out the transitions between the brightest and darkest parts in the skin. So let's begin with the cleanup. So I'm going to increase size of the brush a little bit, and just one by one I'm going to paint over, and Photoshop automatically is going to sample and fix the area that we are not happy with. So here I have just very quickly increased size of the brush. So here be careful, because those pimples here, those little imperfections, we will take care of them with dodging and burning. So for the moment with this tool, it's better to fix on things like this stray hair, all those elements that can be fixed quickly with this tool, and with dodging and burning we will take care of larger areas in the image. So I'm going to very quickly move over the forehead, and with this tool you can take care as well of those very little lines. So I'm just going to smoothen out the skin a bit so it looks a little bit more clean and fresh. So you can continue working with the tool. I'm not going to take you through the whole process because it will take a while, it will take a couple of minutes. So you can basically do the pass through the whole face and remove all those imperfections. And just one thing I would like to mention, that we want to remove all these things. Basically there is a rule that you want to clean, you want to remove all those pimples that probably are not going to be visible in 2 weeks time, but any skin marks that are particular for the very person, like the mole here or on her chin, I'm not going to touch them. So just cleaning the skin, making the skin perfect and leaving those very beautiful skin marks is going to help to maintain this portrait as natural as possible. And another super important thing is that this is not a beauty retouch. This is not a beauty cleanup. I'm working on a classic portrait, so I want to make the skin smooth. I want to make the skin look fresh. I'm not going to retouch the skin to the level of beauty retouch. So just bear in mind that we are not going to be spending hours on this edit. So I want to have the skin nice and fresh. I want to leave all the elements that are creating character of that person. I'm not going to make this image to be looking fake and just not natural. So continue working that way with the tool, and for this image this very one tool is more than enough. If you would have some more stray hair, more helpful would be using perhaps stamp. So you could work with stamp to remove this hair, but as I just mentioned before, I'm not going to do the beauty retouch. So this sort of baby hair is characteristic for the person, for the subject, and I'm going to leave them as they are. So let's continue working that way, and I will meet you when I'm done with the basic cleanup. Okay, so the cleanup is ready. With this very one tool, the spot healing brush tool, we've managed to clean the skin, and as I've mentioned before, I was targeting the pimples, the small imperfections, and now we are going to jump over to dodging and burning. So let's just take a quick preview. So this is before and this is the after. So on this layer cleanup, we've been working with the spot healing brush tool, and that's how we have cleaned the texture. We have removed all those bigger imperfections. So what are we going to be doing now is we will focus on dodging and burning. And as you can see, the skin already looks much better. It looks much more clean. So just with this very layer. However, the whole beauty of retouch, of smoothing the skin that can be done in Photoshop is to skillfully apply the dodging and burning, because now we have still plenty of these uneven transitions. So even though we have removed all those small imperfections, now it will be super helpful and it will transform the image entirely if we take care of these transitions. So for example, if you take a look here, I'm going just to very quickly make a new layer, and I will be working maybe with a pen just to show you clearly what I'm talking about. So for example, here, let's maybe decrease size of the brush. So we have now the brighter part in the forehead, so which is going around here like this. Here we have this brighter part. Here again we have this darker part. So what we are going to do now with dodging and burning, we will be working towards smoothing the transition. So here we have this part that is bright, but in the middle we have this darker patch. So we will be working just on making all these big areas as even and as smooth and possible. Important thing though is that we are not going to be removing those dark parts entirely. So for example, the darker circles that she has under her eyes, this is something completely natural. This is not a beauty retouch, so we are not going to be removing them entirely. First, we are going to be focusing on smoothing the transition across this whole area, and once this is done, we will be making the transition between those dark parts and brighter parts smoother. So it's quite confusing, it sounds quite complex. Let's just jump right into action and we will see how this is done in action. It's much easier to show how to do this, how to work with dodging and burning. rather than explain it. So let's just get rid of this layer and let's prepare our dodging and burning stack. So if you are already familiar with dodging and burning, you are probably working with some sort of action. If you don't, I'm just going to show you how you can do this super simple. And one more thing, some of them might be creating separate stack for micro dodging and burning. So by micro dodging and burning, I understand smoothing the skin and working on a very deep level. I'm talking about smoothing the skin in a very detailed way. So I would be working on the pores level, and this would be more the level of retouching, the beauty retouch. So we are not going to go that far, and that's why I'm just going to create one stack, and in this one stack we are going to smoothen the transitions, and in the end we are going to be working a little bit on shaping, on modeling. So by modeling, I understand strengthening the bright parts that are already visible in the face. So for example, let's maybe again create the new layer. So for example, when you have the lips and there is this beautiful bright part that is in a very natural way lit by the natural light, so we are going to very softly increase the light that is already present there. So as I just mentioned, some of you might prefer to have two separate stacks, and on one stack you might be working on correcting the skin, on smoothing the lines and making the texture smooth and natural, and on a separate stack you might be working on modeling the shape. So for example, making those brighter parts brighter and making the cheekbones slimmer by darkening those areas that are already dark. The same with the nose, but I'm just going to keep things as simple as possible, and I'm going to work on the same layer. Okay, so let's just get rid of this helper layer and let's just change pencil for the brush. Let's create the very simple dodging and burning stack. So let's first create the dodging layer. So I'm going to add here new adjustment layer. Let's maybe make this panel a little bit smaller so you will be able to see everything. So from here I'm just going to select curves, and I'm going to rename this curve to dodge. And here let's click on this little icon here. I'm going to create a control point in the middle of the diagonal line, and I'm going to push it upwards. Now, very important thing is to change the blending mode of this layer to luminosity. So that way, if you will be working either on dodging or burning, for burning we will do the same, you won't be affecting colors. If you would keep the dodging layer and manipulating with the curve with natural instead of with normal, instead of luminosity, you can see that this is affecting colors, and especially with burning, this is making colors more saturated. And we will take care of color in the very last stage of this edit. So right now we want to keep things as simple as possible. So let's just work on luminosity, and we will target color later. So let's now invert the mask, so Command I. Now let's add another adjustment layer, curves. This one is going to be for burning. So let's just rename it to burn, and here we are going to add control point, but instead of pushing it upwards, we are going to push it downwards. Again, let's change the blend mode to luminosity, and let's invert the mask. So basically our stack is ready. Similarly as in the first video, we can create another adjustment layer, and we are going to go for black and white. So the reason why we are doing this is that when you will be working on dodging and burning, you want to focus entirely on transition between the light and shadow, and to make those transitions as smooth as possible. If you would be working on color image, then the color might be distracting. So this image is quite monochromatic. We'll be working on the skin tones on the face, but still some parts are just warmer, some are cooler, and it makes everything, it makes the whole process much more simple if you change it temporarily to black and white, because we can get rid of this layer in the end. So having our stack created, let's just keep things organized. Let's select these 3 layers and let's just group them, Command G, and let's rename this stack to dodging and burning, DB. So in this stack we will be working on dodging and burning. One more tip here, so you will be working with a brush. We will start with dodging, so let's just click on the mask. We will take the brush. Let's now set our brush, so let's right click on the image. The same as before, the size we are going to be adjusting dynamically during working on the image, and hardness should be set to 0. Very important thing is flow. So opacity we are going to keep at 100, but flow try to keep as low as possible. So I'm going to actually go for 4%, and it's important that it's basically much more effective to make more brush strokes and to create this dodging and burning, this smoothening effect gradually, stroke by stroke, layer by layer, rather than applying too strong brush stroke. So let me show you. So if I would go for, let's say, I'm exaggerating a lot now, so the flow is 20, and I'm working here on the dodging layer. Let's select the mask, and I'm going just to apply a brush stroke here. So if I do this, you can see that I'm brightening the image just super strongly, and this area was very dark, so it might be looking okay. But if I just go here and if I try to be subtle and just clean those parts, I'm just creating those white blobs, and this is not going to be helpful. You will just create mess. So let's just get rid of this. I'm going to select the whole mask, Command A, and hit delete. And I will start now with much lower flow. So let's go again for maybe around 6%, and let's begin. So with the round brush, soft, we are going to now paint over those darker areas. And quite important is not to exaggerate too much with magnification. You want to still look at the face, so you won't get too much focus on one very small part of the skin. You want to see the whole face, and it's quite helpful to zoom in, zoom out, and to see how your operation is performing, what's the effect you are achieving. So another quite important aspect is to bear in mind what is the final medium that you want to use to present, to publish your image. If you are going to print the image, and if you want to make a really large print, then you should spend as much time as possible on the retouch to make the skin look really flawless, because then everything will be visible and there is no Command Z once you print the image. But if you are aiming for digital publication, if you want to show your image just on Facebook or Instagram, remember that the resolution that you will save your image in the end is much smaller, and there is no need to go for such a detailed level of retouching. So if I zoom out, you can see that I'm already making a difference. If I switch off the layer, you can see that I've managed to smoothen out the part of the forehead, and it's already enough if I would be working on this image just to publish in digitally, just to publish it on the website or Instagram. So just bear in mind, because there is no point really to spend hours and to make this image perfect if we are going to export it to a small JPEG and forget about this. So we can continue working that way, so we can dynamically make the size of the brush smaller and bigger, And one helpful thing is that sometimes it can be really good to look at the surface of the face in a sort of a abstract way. What I mean by this is that now I remember that this is the person, this is the face, and there are the eyes, and it can be sometimes sort of limiting. So you can try to experiment. If you press and hold R key on your keyboard, you have the possibility of turning, of changing the angle. So this is a trick that is used very often by professional retouchers, because if you have to retouch plenty of images, sometimes it is really painful for the wrist, for the hand, if you have to repeat the same movements and just work in the angle that is not natural for the wrist. So with this tool in Photoshop, you can just temporarily change the angle of the image and you can work in a way that is as comfortable as possible. If you want to get rid of the angle, simply press and hold R, and here you have the button Reset View. So if I hit the button, the image got back to the original angle. Okay, so we are going to be working on the first layer for dodging, so that way I'm making those areas brighter, and on the burn layer, so I made a typo here, it should be burn, okay. So on this layer I will be working in a similar way, but wherever I will paint, I will be darkening the image. So on burn, typically I would just darken certain parts. In this image, I don't think I will apply any burning on the skin, so just a little bit for the eyebrows and maybe in the end for shaping the face, so I might add a little bit on the cheekbones. But let's first continue with dodging, and in the end we can apply a little bit of face shaping. So as I've mentioned before, on dodging we can just strengthen the light that is around the lips. For this you can typically increase the flow a bit, so I can go for 10%, and just remember to be natural, to keep the image as natural as possible. Don't make the person to look like a plastic doll, that's not the point at all. Just to add a little bit more of three-dimensionality. So for example, here we have this beautiful light, and we can just put a little bit more emphasis and to brighten the part that is already bright. Try not to introduce any light in the areas that are not naturally lit already. Okay, so these are the main principles. I'm going to continue working on the image, so I will be continue working on smoothing out these transitions, and I'll meet you when I'm done with my dodging and burning. Okay, so the dodging and burning is ready. I want to just quickly show you the preview. So if I switch off dodging and burning, you can see the before and after. I'm going to now switch off the black and white layer. So now it's going to be more clear. So this is after dodging and burning, and this is before. You can see that the work was quite detailed, and when you are actually painting in, it might see that it's not going to make any difference, but actually this sort of work is super powerful. And if you compare again before and after, all those little areas, when they add up, they give really flawless and perfect final result. So again, before and after. I can quickly show you the preview of my mask. So if you just press and hold Alt key and click on the mask, so this is my mask for burning. As I said before, on burning I'm typically not doing much in comparison with dodging, so it depends on the image, of course, but here I just made the eyebrows a little bit darker, and here the area to make the forehead a little bit more three-dimensional, because I spent quite a lot of time here on dodging and I didn't want to make the forehead look flat. So you can see that in comparison with burning, there is almost nothing. The layer for dodging, this is the mask, that was really quite time consuming. I was working, so here you can see those little brush strokes. This would be the correcting dodging and burning when I was smoothing the skin and working on those transitions almost on the pores level. So here the forehead, there was a lot to work on, and in the end I was applying those really broad brush strokes to work on modeling. So again, let's just decrease the magnification level. This is the mask, and let's just press Alt and click on the mask to get back to the image. So we can zoom in, and again, this is dodging and burning, after, before, and if I Alt click on the background layer and this little eye, this is the image that we have started with, and this is what we have achieved after cleaning the skin. So basically that's what can be done in Photoshop to clean up the skin, to retouch the skin. But now we are going to apply few more layers just to finish this edit, and they are going to make quite a lot of difference as well. So first I'm going to focus on eyes. This is going to be quite simple and quite fast. So let me just create new adjustment layer, and I'm going to go for curves. And on this layer I'm going to brighten the eyes. So let's just create control point in the middle, push it upwards. I don't mind making the color a little bit more saturated, so I'm not going to change the blend mode of this layer. I'm going to leave it to normal. Let's just click on the mask, invert the mask, and let's now paint in the mask. So B for brush, and let's just increase flow so we can just work faster, and let's just paint in only on the colored part of the eye. So I'm working with the white color here, and you can see that I'm making that part brighter. Just be cautious, don't go over the dark part. I can maybe strengthen the highlights, but don't go over the white part and the black part over the retina, because this is going to be looking really fake. So this is before and after. Let's quickly jump to the second eye and let's do the same. I'm just painting over the brown part. This eye was in the shadow, so obviously it's not going to be as bright as the other one. Okay, so let's zoom out and let me show you the before and after. So this is before and after. If you would like to make the eyes brighter, you can still click on the first icon and you can still readjust the curve. And again, if the eyes are maybe too bright, you can change the position of the point, so you can go for darker or you can go for brighter. Just don't overdo this, because then the eyes will look like lit from the inside and this is not going to be looking good. So on this layer we have targeted the eyes, so let's just rename this layer to keep things tidy and organized. Let's now take care of the general contrast. So after dodging and burning and after the cleanup, we have adjusted the eyes, but the face, to be honest, looks quite flat. Let's quickly take care of it. So I'm going to create new adjustment layer curves, and I'm just going to go for S-shaped curve. Here I'm going to change the blend mode to luminosity, and I'm going to add 2 control points. So one is for my shadows, one is for my highlights, and I'm going to go for something like this. Maybe shadows are a little bit too deep. Okay, I'm quite happy with the result. However, I want to make the blacks a little bit softer, so I'm going to add a little bit of matte effect. So let's push this point a little bit lower and let's pull this one upwards. So by doing this, I'm changing the black point. Okay, maybe this is a little bit too much, so let's just do this here with the arrows so I can maintain really high level of precision. So I'm going to go with the arrow on my keyboard, with the arrow pointing down, so I'm decreasing the output and I can see how it affects the image. So I guess something around 12 is enough. So let's just take care of this point. I'm just going to push it a little bit downwards and decrease this part of the shadows, and that one I think it's good. I want to introduce some light, but without flattening the skin. I want to maintain the texture. I want to still be able to see the beautiful skin texture. So that way we got much more three-dimensional look. However, to my liking, even despite we have changed luminosity, we have changed the blend mode from normal to luminosity. Let me just show you how it would look like with normal. So let's maybe do this different way. So I'm going to duplicate this layer and change this one to luminosity. So this one is in normal blending mode, and here we have exactly the same curve, but just to quickly show you the preview, this is luminosity. So with the blending mode luminosity, we are not affecting colors, we are only affecting luminosity levels. So again, luminosity, and this is normal. So you can see how strongly it changes the colors, how it makes it more saturated. So let's just get rid of this one, and to my liking, I feel that the tones are a little bit too warm, they are a little bit too saturated. So typically I would do this, I would create new adjustment layer, black and white, and I would decrease opacity. So I really like getting these more silverish tones, and we are working that way in a non-destructive way. So this layer can be either you can readjust the opacity value or you can get rid of this entirely. So this is before and this is the after. So this image is quite monochromatic, the light was quite cool, and I really like the finish. So it looks a little bit more silverish. So as I've mentioned at the very beginning of this video, we are going to compare results between editing this image in Capture One and in Photoshop. So just to be fair, I've already introduced a little bit of color grading in Capture One. So I'm going to do this in Photoshop as well. So I want to have those images look as similar as possible. So I will introduce a little bit of color grading in Photoshop as well. So we are going to add a little bit of very simple color grading with curves. So let's create another adjustment layer. Let's take curves and let's just rename it to color. So the basic principle of color grading with curves is that you can change, you can select 3 separate channels. RGB consist all of them, red, green and blue, but you can get access to them separately here. So you can adjust colors individually on red, green and blue. So when it comes to this image, I just want to go for super simple effect. I just want to inject a little bit of cyanish blue in the shadows and a little bit of warm yellow orangey tone into the midtones, into the skin. So let's first select the blue channel, and here I'm going to add a little bit of blue to the shadows. So shadows are represented by this peak visible here to the left in the graph, and if we will create control point here and push it upwards, this is going to be adding blue into the shadows. So I have created just one control point, so this created this curve, and as you can see, it's adding blue all over the image. And I want to stop the blue. I don't want it to affect my midtones nor highlights. So I'm creating another control point and I'm just going to lower it, so that way I'm adding actually yellow, because yellow is the opposite color on color wheel to the blue. So by pushing the control point upwards, we are adding blue, and by pushing the control point downwards, we are adding yellow to the selected range. So this is the blue channel. Let's now add a little bit of red to create more of the orange tone in the face. Now it's a little bit too much on the yellow side, so this is before, this is the after. It works perfectly for the shadows, but the face actually looks too yellow. So let's now very quickly jump to the red channel, and here if I want to add red to my midtones, I'm going to be creating control point in the middle and pushing it upwards. So here unfortunately you can't make this tool larger to have more precision. All you can do is to just create control points and to work with them with arrows on your keyboard, so that way you can maintain a bit higher level of precision. So something like this. The opposite color to red on color wheel is cyan, so by pushing this control point downwards, I'm adding cyan to the shadows, which is quite nice. And let's just stop the curve from affecting my highlights. I want to maintain highlights as neutral as possible. Okay, so something like this, and let's now quickly jump to the green channel. So here we have green and magenta, because magenta is the opposite color to green on a color wheel, and here maybe I will add a little bit of green to the shadows. So I just want to create control point here to anchor the curve. I don't want it to affect my highlights nor the midtones, so maybe another one here, and I just want to add one more control point here and push it upwards, so this will affect the shadows, but in a very minimal way. I don't want to add any green to the very nice skin tones that I've already created here on the face. So I'm going to fine-tune the color grading. I'm going to make a few more adjustments. Okay, I finished working with curves, so the color grading is ready. Let me quickly show you the before and after. So this is the image after applying color grading with curves, and this is before. So we can see that the image after working on skin, after retouching, after applying contrast with curves, looks nice, is very two-dimensional, everything looks good on the luminosity levels. However, it is lacking a little bit of warmth. I feel it's a little bit too cool and a little bit too monochromatic, just a little bit too grayish. So the skin tones look quite nice, but I wanted to inject a little bit of blue to the shadows, and I've done this on my color layer. And to harmonize the blues and the cyans in the background, I went for the cinematic color grading, and I have complemented them with oranges, with yellows for the skin tone. So this is again before and after applying color grading. So this is my take on editing this image in Photoshop with dodging and burning. So as you remember, in the first part of this cycle, of this series of 3, we are going to be doing the first video, which is already done. You can watch it. I'm going to provide the link in the description below. So the first video was the same image and I have retouched the image in Capture One. So I've done the complete skin retouch plus color grading in Capture One. This is the second video from the series and we've been working entirely in Photoshop. We performed the skin retouch and we have added a bit of extra adjustments on those layers here above. So let's take quick before and after. We started working with this image and this is the effect we achieved with dodging and burning in Photoshop. And in the upcoming video, the third one, I'm going to show you how you can work with this image with frequency separation method in Photoshop. So we will take this image and we will see what sort of result we can achieve with frequency separation. And in the end, in the third video, I'm going to compare the results from those 3 different techniques, from Capture One, Photoshop dodging and burning, and Photoshop frequency separation. So thanks for watching. If you like my tutorials, I will really appreciate if you subscribe to the channel. So leave me a like and remember, you can always ask questions if there is anything that you are not sure of. If you have any questions, just feel free to ask under this video. So thanks for watching. This was Kasia Zmokla from Digital Art Classes. That's it for now, and I hope to see you in the last video from this series when we will edit the very same image with frequency separation. See you, bye now.